right. Parasitario is a Japanese death metal band, and Everything Belongs to Death is their, I think, somewhat anticipated full-length album after they've released a number of demos. They kind of started out as more of a gore grind influenced band, and I mean more the '90s definition of gore grind, which is a little bit more related to uh, Carcass and whatnot. A contemporary would be like Fester Decay these days. So anyway, this is much more along the lines of Pestilence and early Pestilence, and I think that's it's got to be one of the major influences from vocalist slash guitarist Yuto Kotani, who is kind of the glue that holds everything together in this band, the main force behind it. He was eventually joined by a bassist, and think they use the programmed drums on everything that they've done, and that still more or less works now that they've got a lot of that worked out. But it does ultimately detract from just the general fidelity of everything. So what do they do besides sound like Pestilence? Well, um, it's sort of like the same way I would approach a band like Skeletal Remains when they first started out. It's sort of Pestilence and for Skeletal Remains there was some Gorguts, like there was a lot going on there. And for this band, it really is a matter of incorporating thrash leads and um, so what I would consider post Scream Bloody Gore era death metal style. So we'll cut to a clip here just to give a clear example of that. So the leads, I think the lead guitars are a big part of what made old school death metal vibrant, interesting, and impressive in as it trailed on into towards the 90s. And the best bands found a way to master the uh, get the listener to inhale every moment of every song through interesting lead guitars and riffs all at once. And I think that's what this band does best in their journey towards old school death metal. I think that they're a little bit conflicted between the Dutch death metal affect, the Finnish death metal leads, and there's a lot going into these songs. It's not just sounding like Pestilence. You'll still get that up front, but there's a lot more to this record. Once you dig into it, start to pay attention to every bit of a riff. So if you're that kind of person who really likes old school death metal, this is a guitar record that is going to keep you entertained for a while if you're into this kind of thing. And it definitely did me. Like that's kind of the takeaway is that um, they're a step beyond where they were before, and they've impressed by pushing beyond the EP they released while keeping the idea fresh, keeping this consistent with how they've developed their sound over time. Not a lot to say about it. Otherwise, it is just a classic death metal sound. I happen to be a fan of it, so that's kind of where my enthusiasm comes from and why I chose to review it. So check that out if you're an old school death metal fan. I think most anyone else, it'll just be another thing, right? So there's a bit more about the album and some of its songs in the review, and yeah, go check it out.